We have had a few appearances by Celestials in the MCU, but I feel like so many people don't know who the Celestials are or what their purpose is, and that includes the MCU writers, because we've gotten some conflicting things, and I just, for my own peace of mind, need to make this to tell you all who the Celestials were in the comics, and hopefully someone from Marvel sees it and fixes their shit. The Celestials debuted in the Eternals in the Eternals. Yep, great. The Celestials first debuted in the Eternals #1 in 1976. The two groups were tied together from the very beginning. They were the brainchild of the wonderful Jack Kirby. So this history gets really intense really fast. So essentially, at the beginning of time, before anything we know existed, there was only a single sentient universe, referred to as the first firmament. This single entity was washed in loneliness and as such decided to create servants and companions. These creations were brought about in two forms: the aspirants, who were loyal and dutiful in maintaining the status quo and have no desire for anything more, and the Celestials. The Celestials wanted to go create their own planets, their own universes, create life, let it grow, die, evolve. This line of thinking was considered rebellious by the first firmament. So, as we know, two conflicting ideologies can't possibly live in coexistence with each other, so a war broke out between the two factions. This war ended up destroying the first firmament, and therefore this first universe. The destruction that was brought on by the Civil War. I'm sorry, let me back up. There was a civil war among the aspirants during this war against the aspirants and the Celestials. This civil war ended up being the destruction of the first sentient universe, causing the remains of the first firmament to take the survivors of the aspirants and hightail it out of there. The pieces of the original universe that were left behind formed the second cosmos and the first multiverse. Yeah, the Eternals are the reason the multiverse exists. Have fun. In the Celestials' first journey to other planets, they collect some of the native inhabitants and begin experimenting on them in order to determine what their future evolution would be. Out of these experiments came the Eternals and the Deviants. This is something the Eternals movie also does not handle very well. Anyway, perhaps my favorite run involving the Celestials is from 1978 to 1980. For those interested, it was Thor Annual 7 and Thor issue number 283 through 300. In this run, the Celestials come to visit Earth to be met with a very unhappy Zeus and Odin, who think that they are strong enough to take on an entire team of Celestials. Surprise, surprise, they weren't. They got their butts handed to them and made the very powerful Celestials angry. So the Celestials promised to return and judge as to whether Earth had the right to exist or not. So in preparation for that, Zeus and Odin try to build this like giant magic destroyer thing, which also did not stand a chance against the Celestials. The Celestials kicked that ass too, rendering it completely useless, basically melted it into mush. And then, of course, Hera and Freya are like, yo, there's got to be a better solution to this. Have these 12 perfect humans and leave us alone. And Celestials are like, all right. They take the 12 perfect humans and they dip. Once again, showing that you can't always solve arguments with brute force or let the men be in charge of stuff. So, do we all remember Nowhere from Guardians of the Galaxy, the place? Yeah, that's a decapitated celestial head, or at least it should have been. I genuinely don't remember if we saw enough of it in the movies to determine that, but that's what it is in the comics. The Celestials are essentially the reason the multiverse and all the multiverses exist. In Avengers Volume 8, issue number 5, it's revealed that they're kind of responsible for all superheroes that were bred on Earth. So what happened was a dying Celestial came to Earth shortly after the planet had formed, And this caused the Celestials' blood and power and sweat and whatever to mix with the still forming planet, making it a very specific breeding ground for all super beings to come. There are 36 known Celestials, some spread across realities and multiverses, but all having at least one mention in the main continuity comic verse. The treatment of the Celestials in the MCU is spotty at best. They're a cosmic entity, and the MCU isn't really very good at writing those. But there's a lot more to them than what we've seen on screen. I tried to keep this short and sweet, but we didn't even get to the Horde, which is essentially a cosmic sickness and the creation and defeat of the Dark Celestials. Dark Celestials become such as they are infected by the Horde. The Thor issues I cited, as well as just Avengers Volume 8, are great places to start if you're interested in learning more or reading about the Celestials. Those are probably the two best storylines. The problem I have with the MCU adaptations is the Celestials are so fucking cool, and the MCU just kind of fucked them. In history and storyline, nothing the MCU did with them makes any sense.